Hello, everybody. It's Donna Cravata, and we are here for the Real 50 Over 50. And this week we have Dr. Carrie Johannson with us, who is fondly known as the Sensible Psychologist. She's a psychologist turned speaker and author, and she brings the latest developments in psychology with easy to implement strategies to decrease anxiety, empower change, improve productivity, and decrease conflict for individuals, families, and teams. Her work is based on four foundational concepts that blend together to make navigating the inevitable ups and downs of life easier and more fun: hope, choice, joy, and forward movement. Welcome, Carrie. I can't wait to dig in and chat mental wellness with you.
Thank you, Donna. Me too.
So, first, I want to say Carrie was also on our mental wellness panel in May. So, if you've not watched that, head back over to the website and watch it because it was really, really good. And
That was a truly fabulous conversation.
yeah,
Yeah.
we have some amazing mental wellness professionals in this group. And um, these are not women that have just started doing this from some weekend thing they went to. We're talking decades of experience. So this is real deal help here. And I always like to start off these interviews with what changed for you when you turned 50, because I think we all go through some kind of shift sometime
Oh
around
my
that time.
gosh. So multiple things changed for me right about when I was 50. I had been a divorced single mom, solopreneur for a really long time. I'm now almost 23 years in my business. And when I was 50, I ended up for the first time hiring some help in my business, which was fantastic. And so now I don't feel like I'm doing this all by myself.
Mhm.
I also married my absolutely fabulous boyfriend, now husband, and have this phenomenal partnership, which is really wonderful. And my daughter launched. So we had in the last couple of years, there's been a lot that has gone on, and all of it has really moved me away from the pressure to do everything by myself to a much more collaborative approach to life, which frankly I prefer. So
Yeah.
I'm thrilled. Yeah,
Yeah, it does take a village to get just about anything done.
yeah, absolutely.
It's good to have a good village around you. So, talk to me a little bit about your mission. Your mission is led by joy.
So it was funny. I had a client the other day and we were playing a game of questions. And one of the questions that came up was describe yourself as a color. And I thought this was it was a fun session with one of my younger clients. And, and the client asked me to answer the question. And I said, well, it would be like butter yellow because I feel like the best version of myself is a sunny side up kind of person.
Mhm.
And when I am in what I consider to be my best self, I am optimistic and energetic and cheerful and kind. And those are all things that are really important to me that I try to cultivate. And that's just, yeah, that sort of upbeat, forward moving person. And I felt like I needed a bit of a tagline for that. And so led by
Mm,
joy was it. And it helps me make decisions, right? Like
mhm.
what's the thing if I have like a couple of weeks ago, I had four different conferences to choose from all in the same weekend, right? One of them was a no brainer. I was speaking at it. So that was easy. Yes, I was going to do that event. But the other three, it was sorting through. And one of the ways I could sort it was what's the one that feels the most uplifting? What's the one that I think is going to give me the best information that's going to
Mhm.
put me in front of people who I feel like I'm really going to resonate with? So that led by
Mhm.
joy concept uh, doesn't just help me make decisions like, what muffins am I making for brunch on Sunday? It also helps me make bigger decisions like what's the direction to move with my business?
And now, is
Yeah.
that something that you also share with clients when you're working with them?
Absolutely. And I think in general one of the things that my clients can expect from working with me, and we will actually talk about this, is and it's one of the first of the four of my four pillars, which is holding hope. And
Mhm.
that piece of holding hope, oftentimes I'm the person holding hope for someone, and I can see what their potential is, and I can see what strengths they have. Um, and oftentimes when they come in, they aren't real attuned to that, right?
Mhm.
They're in a rough place and they're having a hard time seeing what's good about them and what's good in their life. And so that's a piece of what I provide. And that led by joy is kind of a foundational concept for my work.
Okay. So while we're here, why don't we just talk about all four of those things?
Sure. So, actually, this was awesome. This was my assistant who was like, "We need to like make this, sort of let's make this make more sense, right?
Mhm.
Let's describe what you do." And so I was like, "Well, I think the first step is that holding of hope, and to return people to hope. The
Mhm.
second step is to empower people with real information, real choices, and to help them feel empowered in themselves instead of giving that away outside.
Mhm.
Um, the third step is all about moving forward, right? Because at the end of the day, if we are stuck perseverating on the past and what didn't happen and what isn't going to happen and what might happen in the future. So we're either stuck in the past in regret or frustration, or we're stuck worried about the future. That really paralyzes us. And so moving forward is a big piece of our work. Is like, hey, let's identify what's really going on right now in your world, and then
Mhm.
how can we move forward? What's our One of my favorite questions to ask is, what's our next best move? Right?
Mm.
Given this reality, what's our next best move? And then the fourth pillar is enjoy, because at the end of the day, I certainly don't have the market on what happens after we die. I have no idea if reincarnation is a thing or not, or if nothing happens. Who knows? Um, so if we assume that we get this life thing one time, holy cow, let's
Yeah.
enjoy it, right? Because certainly there's going to be painful things that happen to all of us. We cannot avoid that. But we also can deliberately cultivate joy. So while we can't avoid pain, we can deliberately cultivate good experiences, nice relationships. Like, those are things that you can actually skillfully create, which is really fantastic.
Yeah. I love that you added the word skillfully.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk a lot about that, right? Because
Yeah.
if we are just responding, oftentimes it's not really that skillful, right?
Mhm.
We'll just react or just unconsciously do the thing that we've always done. And if we're skillfully doing something, that kind of inherently means that we've slowed down and we're like, what might work here? Let's think about what our options are.
Mm. It feels very aspirational.
Yeah.
I like that. So now we're kind of talking about like creating um, these new, like almost pillars for how we live with ourselves. So how would you add like ease and kindness and self-wellness to that?
So I think those are all components of taking good care of yourself and taking good care of your world, right?
Mhm.
So, and there's some things that it's funny. I was reading a thing on Facebook the other day and it was like, choose your hard, right? And then it was giving all of these opposites. And on the one hand, I can agree with that, right? Like, things are going to be hard, and yes, you have to put some effort in. So maybe that's actually a better way to put it. Like, if you really want to do things, you can't just sit around and wait for things to fall in your lap. You do actually have to get out and do things. This is always fun when I'm talking to a client who is struggling with being single. We'll pick on this example.
Mhm.
Struggling with being single, but they aren't leaving their house. Right? And I'm like, well, Mr. or Mrs. Right doesn't just like, she's not going to drop through your chimney, right? Like, that's Santa Claus. It's only for children, right? Like, this, if you actually want to meet the person that you want to partner with, you're going to need to put in some effort. And that doesn't mean it has to be hard,
Mhm.
but, you do have to put in, you have to show up, right? And if we can show up in ways that are as easeful as possible, I'm generally going to be a fan of that.
Hmm.
And if you can show up in ways where you're kind to yourself and you're kind to other people, I'm always going to be a fan of that too. And I think that those approaches are part of the building blocks to mental wellness.
Yeah, it's so true. I had to learn ease because
Yeah.
everything was always hard, and um, I didn't know how to get past the hard, because it was how I approached everything, and it took a long time to be able to do that. I
Well, and
mean,
it's interesting because sometimes, and you tell me if this has been true for you, but sometimes we're making things harder than it has to be.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, because I didn't know any other way.
Mhm.
I mean, I was told from before I was here, things are going to be hard,
Yeah.
and if it was fun, they wouldn't call it work.
Oh, I always think that's too bad because I think my work is so fun.
Oh, I love what I do. I absolutely and every job I've ever had, I've always turned it into something totally different. So I've proven this wrong for so many years, but I didn't know how to accept it
Yeah, yeah,
and plan
absolutely.
for it. So it's amazing what we tell ourselves and what we convince ourselves of, um, and what we either give or take away our permission
Yes,
for.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's.
and I think that sometimes I think the word balance is overused, but I actually think that if we go back to the traditional definition of the word balance, which is literally based on scales and balancing
Mhm.
them out, um, there has to be a balance between deliberate effort and rest. So, one of the things that I talk to my clients a lot about is particularly in the US culture, particularly in the like high end, really driven, success oriented business piece of US culture. We have this notion that if we just push harder, that that's actually going to lead to better results. It's
Yeah.
actually really interesting. There's some research that documents that there is a law of diminishing returns on effort. And at some point we do need to rest. So it's funny. I've had some clients who have either cut their work hours or they were working 70 hours a week or something like that. And it's interesting when they cut their work hours and added in some deliberate self-care, particularly improved nutrition,
Mhm.
improved exercise, um, improved sleep, right? Those are the building blocks. The most core foundational building blocks to mental wellness are surprisingly physical: sleep, exercise, and nutrition. But when you put those in, you can go from a 70-hour work week to a 45-hour work week and get almost the exact same amount done,
Yeah.
right? So push, 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 collapse. Collapsing is not actually rejuvenating.
No.
But little bit of push, little bit of rest, push, push, rest. Oh my gosh, you can go really far on that model.
Yeah, I after, like, coming from a home of, there is no rest, I started to work in law firms.
Oh, where there's no rest.
No
There's no rest
rest.
at all. No, and you're
There's
supposed to
actually
build something during
competitions
the
who
week.
can work more hours. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
like, I didn't see daylight for years,
Uh-huh. Mhm.
and I collapsed.
Yeah.
There was actually one project I was working on, I finished it, I couldn't put my arms down because I had typed so much, and they took me right to the hospital.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but I did that for 25 years.
I don't know if you knew that I chose between being a psychologist and a lawyer.
No.
And in college, I actually ended up choosing law. And so graduated from college and went to work for a law firm.
Mhm.
And oh my gosh, I hated that job. I think I only lasted 7 weeks. It was terrible. I was in a room, I was really dressed up, right? And I was in a room by myself, surrounded by paper. And then I would copy the papers, and then I would move half of the papers, from, I don't know, the
Yeah.
17th floor to the 30th floor or something like that. And then I would do it all over again. And it
Mhm.
was quite clear that this was not going to be for me. Um, but, but, but I had this idea about law, like law is so interesting,
Mm,
except the application of it, at least at the law firm that I joined, was
mhm.
not, it was not a good fit,
No,
right?
no, no. It was hell.
Yeah.
It was hell, and I quit, almost 18 years ago and started my own business,
Congratulations.
and I'm
Yeah.
still here. Woohoo!
That's awesome. Yeah, I left and decided to go back to school to become a psychologist.
And that was a wise move.
So wise, wise move. Yeah, this is in the way back time machine. So
This just kind of naturally leads me to one of my favorite topics, which is resilience.
yes.
Let's talk resilience, and that too is a scale.
Resilience is that's one of the really cool things about resilience. It is absolutely a skill. And because it's a skill, that means that you can learn
Mhm.
and you can improve it, right? And resilience is all about the ability. Hi, Iris. Oh my gosh. I
I
love
love
Iris.
when we have random meetups here.
Oh, that's so fun. Yeah, and it's so fun how it's technology's nifty. Thank you, Iris. Yes, we will talk about my book.
Yes.
Um, but resilience is all about the ability to bounce back
Mm,
when we get one of life's inevitable downturns, right? I think one of the things we're doing that I personally think is a giant mistake in the self-help industry right now. First of all, is we're pathologizing everyone, right? Everybody's got a diagnosis, everybody's broken and they all need to be fixed and like, oh my gosh. No, right? But what is true is that life goes up and down. And so, one of the problems with the self help industry is this notion that we're all broken and we're all such a mess and we all have to be fixed. But the other piece of it is that the flip side of that information is that they're promising that if you just do this program, you're going to get a problem free life. Right.
mm.
And now
It's a pipe
I would
dream.
sign, I would sign up for a problem free life. Right. And at the same time, they don't exist. So it's not real. And what's happening is I'm finding people who are really doing deep dives into this self-help stuff, and they're
Mhm,
in a place where they feel like they failed because they haven't gotten to an anxiety-free life, a problem-free life. They still lose their temper sometimes, right? Like all of that is actually normal and to be expected. And that's what
mhm,
resilience is all about, is it normalizes that life gets a little bumpy.
mhm,
And if we have resilience, number one, we can notice that we're in a bump. And number two, then we can think through what we want to do about it instead of just getting flooded with emotions and just relying on unconscious responses. This
yeah.
way we
I
get
mean,
to choose our responses.
I still go back into, you know, workhorse mode, and
Sure.
but now I know, I have evidence now. I have evidence that I don't have to do that. The world won't fall apart.
Yeah.
I can stop. I can come back to this. I'm not a brain surgeon. Nobody dies.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
I can eat. But, I still, 18 years in my own business, and I still need to remind myself of that.
Oh, absolutely. This is what I was using this example yesterday in session with one of my clients. I was like, I teach this stuff all day long. And I still have to remind myself about the tips and tricks that I give my clients.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, um, the other thing I really wanted to touch on too was that mental health it's a human experience. We all have it. It's not good, it's not bad, it's another continuum, like there is that balance that goes back and forth. Like we have physical health, we
Mhm.
have mental health, and it doesn't need to be labeled as bad or
Well,
negative or
it's
stigmatized.
actually just a component of health, right?
Yeah.
How's your body functioning? How how are you doing emotionally, right? How are your relationships? How's your spiritual life? Like
Mm-hmm.
how's do you have meaningful work? Like these are all aspects to what makes for a healthy, well-rounded life.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, this idea that everybody has some sort of secret mental illness lurking that they really have to pay attention to. Like, even if you do have mental illness, you probably have a lot of other things on the board as well. So
Mm,
let's not just narrow down to one problem that's defining you. Like, let's make you a broader person than that.
mm. Yeah, I love that approach because, you know, it's we all have it. It's
Mhm.
there.
Yeah.
We have minds. And, I really wanna go back to the skillful responses
Yes.
because I think, just really driving home that there are things we can learn, and they don't have to be hard, and they're not technical, it's just learning how to cope, learning how to balance, learning how to understand your own emotions, and that every emotion is valid, whether it's a high positive emotion or a low, sad emotion. There are there's validity to all of it, and there's messages in all of it, and let's talk
Yes.
about that a little bit.
And I think there's a couple of different pieces to this that I think are important to talk about. The first is that emotions are inherently fleeting. So they
Mhm,
arise and then they fall. And that is true. I think a piece of of what we're doing right now is we have this idea that we can somehow insist on happiness being a stasis, right? And
mm,
that is not accurate. Happiness is an emotion, which means it comes up. And sometimes it's really up and it's really fun.
mm,
And sometimes it's really hard to come by. And that's actually okay.
yeah,
But if all emotions are not necessarily cyclical. Cyclical means that it's going to go in a certain pattern,
mhm,
right? But they arise and they fall. And then at some point they might come back and then they'll fall again. So that means that happiness is like that, but it also means that things like anxiety are like that. So
mm,
emotions tend to arise and they give you information in the moment. So we've come to decide that our emotions actually should drive our behavior. And I am of the mindset, which I think is pretty well supported with some, psychological research, that it's actually behavior that drives emotions.
mhm,
Right? One of the examples I use all the time is people are like, "Oh, well, I'll wait to do that until I'm motivated." Well, motivation, A, is an emotion, it's feeling, and B, it comes at the conclusion of action,
mm,
right?
mhm,
So it does not, if you are waiting for motivation, it very rarely arrives before you have started doing the thing that you need to do.
mhm. Oh,
But
that's
once you start doing the thing that you need to do, and I'm a master procrastinator. I think you and I were talking earlier about
mhm.
procrastination before we got online. I am a procrastinator in recovery. Uh, this is very real. This is not really actually, it sounds sarcastic. It is not. It's something I really have to manage for myself because I will get worried about doing something and then I will suddenly be deep cleaning my kitchen, right?
Mhm,
Reorganizing my sock drawer. I'll suddenly need to run an errand, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, Carrie, sit your butt down and do the thing that you are worried about doing.
mhm,
And once I start, right? But we have good research. This is true for people, not just me. Once you start, it tends to then increase your motivation,
mm,
right?
yeah,
So these
and the
emotions,
reality is it's never as much as you thought it was going to be.
and almost all the time, it's not as bad as you think, right?
Yeah,
Um, but this notion of emotions and the purpose that they serve, sometimes they just come out of nowhere, right?
mm,
Um, and sometimes they come up for really good reason. I was traveling this weekend and I was reorganizing my bags at the airport and somehow managed to leave an entire packing cube on a chair at the gate in Montana, right? How did I miss this? I have no idea. Like, how is it possible that I missed like 8.5 by 11, packing cube filled with snacks, by the way, homemade pastries made by my neighbor. Oh, so bummed. Um, but I get on the plane and I'm disappointed because I really wanted those pastries. And then I'm frustrated because that was really mindless of me, right? Like I know better. I know how to travel. I'm good at traveling, right? I
Mhm.
don't leave my stuff around. I certainly don't leave my stuff at the gate.
Mm,
Certainly don't leave something that big at the gate, right? Like
mm,
come on, man. So then I'm frustrated with myself. And then, the next morning, then I'm worried because I'm like, well, am I going to get the packing cube back? I kind of like that. I've had that thing for like 15 years. It's perfect for my travel setup. And so just notice that all of those emotions, and I'm purposely using a silly example,
mm.
right? I'm purposely using a silly example because for something that silly, I still had all those emotions. So imagine what happens when it's real big,
Mm.
right? And the emotions give you information, and then you can use that as information to figure out what's my next best move.
Yeah. And sometimes the little silly things like leaving your packing cube at the gate, um, they're more harmful because we're really beating ourselves up over
Yes.
something that doesn't really matter. So we're creating this pattern of we're going to
Right.
do this for anything that happens that isn't what we perceive to be optimal. And,
Exactly.
you can write off the big things as well. Of course, I felt like that because this was enormous.
Right.
But when you get into that habit of beating yourself up over every little thing,
Yeah.
when do you escape that? Because there becomes no escape from that because you're not allowing yourself the way out.
And how you escape it is essentially you put it into context,
Yes, yes.
right? Like, I made a
Yeah,
mistake. People
yeah,
make mistakes, me
yeah,
included. I
yeah.
didn't feel great about it. That's
Mm,
okay.
okay.
This is pretty reasonable,
Mhm.
right? And what's my next best move, right? So moving into an action step, right? So
Yeah,
emotions,
Amazon.
behavior is what gets you out of the problem. Um, Call around to the airport, figure out
Mm,
if I can get this back. Might get it
mhm.
back, might not. I don't know. The jury's still out. Um, they found it, which is great. Um, Probably, hopefully, someone ate the snacks, but I hope they did. There was bacon in there too. I mean, come on, bacon? That's what I lost. This is terrible. Um, but all kidding aside, it's that notion of this is a very simple and silly example that I use on purpose because the steps are actually the same,
Yeah.
right? The steps are something happens, whether it's positive or negative, emotions are going to come up in reaction to it. It's important for you to notice them and label them. The fascinating thing about labeling emotions, if you take the time to label a positive emotion, it tends to make it stickier, right? So one of the things about humans is we're set up a little bit strangely. We are very sticky for negative experiences. We are very slippery for positives. And so we want to actually kind of reverse that process where we can become more resilient, let go of the negatives more quickly, and we can let the positives stick more permanently. So, this notion of whether it's a positive occurrence or a negative occurrence, if you can notice the emotions and label them, if it's a positive emotion, it's going to make it stickier. If it's a negative emotion, it cuts it in about half.
Oh, that's brilliant and easy.
So easy, right? And just saying out loud, and this is the cool thing, you can say this out loud to other people. Oh, I'm really nervous right now. Most people aren't jerks. Contrary to what the media is saying, most people aren't jerks. I'll repeat that. Most people, not only are they not jerks, they want to help. Now, certainly, if you know you're in the presence of a true jerk, don't share your emotions, get vulnerable with them. That is just foolhardy, right? But most people, like it, let's say you're going to a job interview and you're nervous and you're sweating a little bit, right? And you go to shake hands and your hands sweaty. Oh, that feels terrible. But if you say out loud, oh my gosh, so nice to meet you. I'm a little nervous about this job interview. All of a sudden, most likely, thank you, Leslie, most likely, they're going to be like, it's okay. and then you're going to have a better job interview. But if you walk into the job interview and try to stuff that emotion, oh my gosh, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But if you notice it and label it, even whether you're labeling it and saying it out loud inside your own head, or you're actually saying it out loud, cuts the negative emotions in about half,
Mm,
increases the positive emotions.
amazing. We're just about at time, but because Leslie brings this up, I just want to kind of have a quick chat about um, kindness and compassion
Yeah.
because they're so important, and not only for others but for ourselves.
Well, don't be fooled by the news media. Most of us agree on more topics than we disagree on. There's research that demonstrates this over and over and over again. Mark Manson is my favorite blogger who's really doing deep dives into that particular topic. So most of us agree more than we disagree.
Yeah.
Most people are interested in helping other people. If you ask someone for a favor, they tend to be instinctually inclined to try and make that come true.
Hmm.
And real connections really make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kindness and compassion, showing it to yourself. And then also, let's not be afraid to show that to other people. Doesn't mean
Hmm.
you have to agree with everybody at all, but you can be kind even if you are, coming at something from different angles.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you learn to be kind and compassionate to yourself, it
A
kind
lot
of
easier to do
naturally
for
extends out to others
Yeah,
and vice versa.
absolutely.
Okay, well, we are at time, and I want to just share um, Dr. Carrie's website, and you can find her at selfhelponthego.com. You could find her on the Real 50 Over 50. Do
Well,
you want to mention of your book?
absolutely. My book is called Self Help on the Go, and you can actually get it at my website of the same title. It's available on Amazon, and it's 99 practical ways to figure out what your next best move is. Read one tip at a time. You don't have to read the whole book. It's fast, it's easy, and it's all stuff that we know works really well.
I'm sending that to my son today.
Oh, yay!
So I always ask at the end of the interview to share a wisdom bomb. Is there maybe one you want to share out of your book?
I think one of the things I would encourage people to do is to be able to notice and label those emotions. You have to get into the present moment. One of the easiest ways to do that is take just a second wherever you are listening right now and press your left foot into the ground. Kind of wiggle your toes around. It's actually a really fast and easy way to ground yourself, right? Because as soon as we're riled up, all of our energeticness ends up being sort of like here up.
Mhm.
And that notion of taking just a second and feeling back into your feet redistributes, balances us a little bit, redistributes our energy. And then we can slow down and take a breath and figure out, what am I feeling right now?
Mm, really
What
good.
do I want to do about it? Yeah.
And why the left foot rather than the right foot?
I was just picking because my left foot's
Oh.
on the ground, my right foot's crossed.
Oh, mysterious.
It's fun to, like, start with one, do the other one. Yeah, go back and forth.
Okay, that is great advice, and again, things anybody could do. And learning how to do these things just kind of create these healthy patterns, and everything in your body becomes balanced and healthier. So
Yeah,
it's a lifelong thing.
not perfect, but a
No,
little bit more balanced. Understand
yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I think we cannot hear enough of this because, you know, we have to balance all the stuff that comes at us, and that's never stopping, right?
Yeah.
So thank you, Carrie, and we will be back next week with another Real 50 over 50. And we are booked all the way into March of next year.
Woo-hoo. Nicely done.
We have a lot of women over 50 with a lot of things to say. So keep coming back every Wednesday. If you're watching on the replay, please tag us and we will come back and keep the conversation going. So everybody have a great Wednesday and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you.